For everyone who's here, thank you all for taking the time to come out or virtually come out at 7 p.m. on a Thursday to chat with us. But today we're going to be talking about everything related to test prep, touching on the SAT, the ACT, test optional, and a lot of other really fun things like that. Presented mostly by Kevin, and his name is not on there, but you will be hearing from him a lot this evening. Just a few quick introductions to get to know your hosts. Hi, I'm Aiden. As I said in my little chat, I'm from New Jersey. I attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I just graduated back in May. Now I'm the co-founder of Access Scholarships, which is, some of you may know, a scholarship search engine, student resource platform. Super awesome. We'll get into it a little bit more later. A few of my hobbies and interests outside of talking to students and helping students are I love to run, I love to bake, and I really enjoy listening to music. And aside from that, my favorite social media platform at the moment is Instagram. So just a little bit to get to know me.
And hi, everybody, and thanks for having me, Aiden. My name is
Yeah.
Kevin Organichek. I am from Boston, and let's see, I've been in the world of college admissions and test preparation for over 20 years. I was an admissions advisor at Ohio State University. I founded the organization called the Association for Test Preparation, Admissions, and Private Tutoring, which is an association of independent and local tutors that provide really, really good service and just exceptional student outcomes. I'm currently a college planning specialist, and my hobbies include camping, conservation, and adventure racing. I was hesitant to put that one on because I've only done one. And my favorite social media platform is Instagram, but candidly, I don't spend a lot of time on social media. So we're so pleased to have you. Tonight, we're going to be covering some of the more general questions that students have about SAT and ACT, the differences between them, how to figure out if you should take a test at all, and if so, which of the two, or should you take both? We'll talk about some basic testing timelines. So how to schedule your preparation to test, when to test, and all that good stuff. And then we'll talk about some of the more nuanced stuff related to test scoring, including super scoring and test optional admissions, okay? So if you find that you have questions along the way, just put them in the chat and send them through to Aiden. And at the end of the presentation, she and I will go through and answer all the questions that we have. So, so go ahead.
Oh, I was also just going to say, which I forgot to mention, make sure everyone to stay on until the end. We also will be giving away two $50 Amazon gift cards to 2 lucky participants. So we will be announcing that at the very end. So if you stay tuned, you will have a chance at winning.
Absolutely. And also you'll be registered for the $1,000 no essay Too Cool for School college scholarship. So, but you have to stay to the end.
Lots of perks here.
You'll want to stay to the end because we have excellent giveaways and things to do. So generally speaking, like this whole conversation is going to be framed in the components of college admissions. And so we know that college admissions, there are a lot of things to do, a lot of hoops to jump through, including the college application, making a school list, writing a personal statement, and in some cases, providing supplemental essays to the colleges you want to attend, having a good, solid GPA and a transcript, which will be reviewed by the admissions committees, showing really a deep interest in extracurricular activities, but not necessarily lots of different activities, just a couple activities and a deep interest in maybe a leadership position. Standardized test scores, which may or may not be relevant for you this year and next, letters of recommendation. So we're going to take a subsection of that and look at standardized tests. So there are two, SAT and ACT, right? And they're accepted equally by all schools in the US. So there's no difference. At one point, I think there was a East Coast schools favored SAT and Midwest schools favored ACT. That's no more. You can submit either equally. So Uh, the SAT is scored on a scale of 4 to 600. So there's two sections, each worth 800. And the ACT is scaled on a section of 1 to 36, and that's four sections, each worth 36. The test structure of the SAT and ACT, it's similar for both. Reading, writing and language, math, and no longer really an optional essay, at least after June, no longer an essay on the SAT. ACT, English, math, reading, and science reasoning, and an optional essay. So the science reasoning piece on the ACT doesn't require specific scientific knowledge. It requires you to know and understand how to interpret graphs and charts, and it's a test of graphic literacy. So that used to be a distinguishing feature of the ACT because the SAT did not have anything like that. But now, as of 2014 forward, the SAT tests graphic literacy, just it tests graphic literacy throughout the various sections of the exam. So they don't call it science reasoning, but there are some of those question types in the SAT. The length of the SAT is 3 hours, and I'm sorry, this is, I think I edited this incorrectly, but 3 hours and 50 minutes with the essay, 3 hours without, and the ACT is 2 hours and 55 minutes without the essay, 3 hours and 40 minutes with the essay. The math on the SAT covers through probability and statistics, and about, at least in 2020, about 60% of most forms had, I'm sorry, most forms as of last year had about 60% algebra questions. So it's heavy on the algebra. ACT, on the other hand, covers through trigonometry, has more geometry questions than the ACT or than the SAT, and also allows you to use a calculator for the entire math section. On the SAT, there's a calculator section and there's a no calculator section. So there are a couple of slight variations there. The essays on both are optional, and they're again very similar. So let me just move this. Essays on the SAT include how, reading comprehension, but again, these are optional and they're not highly regarded. So I don't even know, if it's worth spending the time on with regard to the SAT. And the ACT, the optional essays involve how well you evaluate and analyze an issue. Okay. So some key differences. One thing is the SAT is longer, and the time per question is also a bit longer than on the ACT. Another thing is the SAT has fewer geometry questions, probably less than 10%, has more algebra. It's known that if you do well in math, then the SAT is the test for you. And so the rationale there is half of your overall score on the SAT comes from your math score, while only a fourth of the ACT, or a little more than a fourth of the ACT, comes from your math score. So, so the prevailing wisdom was, if you're good at math, take the SAT. If you're better at reading and writing and English and languages, then take the ACT. But the reality is that you won't know for sure unless you take one full test of each and then see how you do. You'll be able to compare how you do through a concordance table, and we'll be sending that to you as part of the extra stuff that we're giving away at the end. But essentially, you're going to get a score for the SAT and a score for the ACT by taking two full-length tests yourself, and then compare those scores. And whichever whichever test you did significantly better on, then that's probably the one you should focus on. If you did about the same on each, then you should just choose which one you feel more comfortable with. Okay. But why are we even talking about tests? Because we're in this post-COVID test optional sort of situation. Well, oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Aiden, I'm sorry. So the optional essays on the standardized tests, again, the College Board is dropping the SAT optional essay in June. And the ACT optional essay hasn't come under the same fire as the SAT, but you should take a look at the schools to which you're applying to see what precisely they require in terms of that. So let me hand it back over to you, Aiden, and you can talk a little bit about what it was like. I mean, you just sort of went through this within the last 5 years, so tell us
Yeah.
about what you experienced.
Yeah, definitely. So, I thought that this would be helpful for you guys because I just recently graduated from college. So, I went through the whole test prep, standardized testing process not too long ago at all. And I am telling you about my journey so that I hope you guys will learn from my mistakes because I did make a few. So, well, the first step was not a mistake. I took the PSAT when it was offered to me, which was my sophomore year. I think around October time of my sophomore year, um, which was good. And then after I took the PSAT, I kind of just jumped right into the SAT. I didn't really give much thought to which test would be a better option for me, which one suited my strong suits better, and um, things like that. I kind of just said, okay, I'm probably just going to take the SAT. It's fine. It doesn't matter. So I studied for the SAT for the majority of my junior year. I enrolled in a course through Princeton Review. At one point, I even also got a private tutor for a few sessions while I was preparing for the different test days. And as you can see from the emoji right there, I took the SAT 3 times throughout my junior year. And that was definitely like a very taxing experience. Um, I'm sure some of you can kind of just anticipate or think about the stress that comes with studying for the exam once. And for some reason, I felt like I had to put myself through it 3 times, which was absolutely crazy. Um, but so after that, I was satisfied with my score, but I was still thinking that maybe I should try out the ACT, maybe I would score a little bit better. So after taking the SAT 3 times, I then went back, started completely over again, and started preparing for the ACT. Did a whole lot more prep, and I took that twice. And then at the end of the day, I submitted both scores. So I submitted one SAT score and one ACT score. But they did end up being of equal value. So what I really want to kind of push to you guys here is just the fact that um, it's super important to take the time in the beginning of the process to really um, think about and decide which test you think is a better option for you, because it'll save you a lot of time. It'll also probably save you a lot of money if you can just pick one right from the get-go and then get studying for it and be confident in your decision there. It'll definitely just only benefit you.
I didn't realize that you took the ACT twice as well.
Yeah.
Was there a notable difference in your score,
No,
or were they
it was
roughly equivalent when you
they
used
were they were equivalent. So the thing is that if I had taken a mock exam for the SAT and a mock exam for the ACT and then realized that, then I would have saved myself the time of either taking 2 tests or taking 3 tests. You know what I mean? So definitely for all of you that are out here and that you are listening and watching, learn from my mistake, and definitely take those practice exams first to kind of decide which one is the best option for you.
sage advice? Sage advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'll give you my perspective. Perspective of a parent. So I had a daughter that was preparing to go to college. She took the PSAT, of course. You take a practice PSAT as a sophomore, an official PSAT as a junior, tried ACT and SAT, settled on taking the SAT after doing what I said, take a full length exam of each one and then compare the scores. We prepped her for the SAT, but she also took the ACT just because why not? Like if she scored well on it or significantly better than she had done on the SAT, then we could send those scores. She prepared for about 6 months with Kaplan with one of their earlier live online programs and applied to a combination of competitive state schools and a few of the little Ivies. She got waitlisted at several, she got into several, and in her top choice, she got some merit aid as a result of her GPA and her test scores, or whatever her index number was. I think what I learned there is that I was I was surprised at how she could do the live online test preparation with like a live tutor teaching her, and also be texting her friends at the same time, and and still retaining all the information. It was amazing to me. I think that was a big piece. And then the other piece was that it really it came down, when it came down to merit consideration, it came down to her index, her academic index, which was a combination of her GPA and then her test scores. So that mattered a good deal to the schools that she eventually got accepted to. And we talked about this a little bit, but so sophomore year is the year where like kids are, they just start to be introduced to the college, like the college journey, right? I mean, some are hard charging from sixth grade forward. I get that, but the majority of the population, we'll just say the average students, they are given a practice PSAT when they're sophomores. And they're given it under test-like conditions, usually at their high school or at a local high school. And that sort of starts the ball rolling. Ideally, you want to then start tackling some of your test prep. The longer that you can prepare before the test, or at least research shows that the longer that you spend preparing for the test, the better the outcomes. And I think the College Board did research on students that used Khan Academy for 12 months, and had average score increases of around 120 points. And so they base their recommendations on a 12-month timeline. So I don't know if you quite need 12 months, but it's always better to actually learn rather than to memorize and cram. And it's usually much less stress inducing as well. Anyways, so after sophomore year, summer of that year, before you're going into junior year, taking mock SATs and ACT tests is really it's a good practice. And again, that's when you can figure out which test to focus on. Um, and then junior year, usually around October, you have the PSAT for real, and this is where students will take it and qualify or not for the National Merit Scholarship Award. The PSAT scores count. It's essentially it's very similar to what the actual SAT looks like, and it's not unheard of to, if you just take your PSAT score, to just add a zero to it to get what an SAT score might look like. So if you get a 154, or I'm sorry, like a 140 on the PSAT, add a zero to it, and you'd get a 1400 on the SAT. And that's because, well, the test maker is the same for both, and the tests are normalized in a very similar way. So again, in junior year, register for the SAT or the ACT and spend time prepping and taking your exam of choice. So as Aiden said, like, you can take these tests multiple times. I don't know that you want to. I think, a great policy is to try and, do one and be done. But I think that's certainly the exception these days, because there really is no reason to not take it if you can improve the score, other than, it's taxing on your time, and it may take away from other important things. But spend your time prepping, and uh, go through the score reports from your practice tests, and look at the areas that you need help with, look at the areas that you're strong in, and then start to create a study plan based on that. And this is exactly what test prep companies do as well. It's a gap analysis. It's identifying your strengths and weaknesses, and then building a study plan based on your weaknesses. So um, have realistic expectations and set goals for your improvement. So it's not unheard of, to take the test and to be able to improve 200 or even 300 points. It's not typical, but it's not unheard of, and it takes a fair amount of commitment to do that. So be realistic in your goal setting. If you if you need to get certain scores, make sure that you put the time in that you need to get that score, and make sure that that doesn't negatively impact all of your other pursuits or all of the other student pursuits. Um, and you can essentially, once you get through Algebra 2, you can take the SAT or the ACT. That Algebra 2 piece is important. You need to be able to get through that math. And I think most students are through that by um, freshman, sophomore, junior year for sure. But once you're through that, then you essentially have from like spring of 10th grade or whenever you're done with Algebra 2, let's say from spring of 10th grade all the way through fall of 11th grade to consider, or even sometimes beyond that, to take the test. So there's lots of tests offered in that time period and plenty of opportunity for you. Um, if you still need to take a test or you're trying to improve your score senior year, you can still take it. And if you don't have a test score that you want to submit, but you need to submit one, um, admissions committees are usually okay if you as long as you try and communicate with them to let them know you have another score coming. It's all about reaching out and letting them know. Or if your test date was delayed or you're taking another test, um, they're usually pretty understanding. You just have to contact them. So we talked about the basic score of each test. Well, now we're going to talk about super scoring. So super scoring is basically like it's allowing a student to cherry pick their best score from different sections of different administrations of the exam. So if I scored a 500 on the reading, writing, English SAT and a 600 on the math SAT, and I wanted to take it again and get a better score, I might focus really hard and study for the writing section, the reading, writing section, and score 600 on that the next time I take it. But I may drop in math because I focused all my energy on the reading and writing. So I could take the 600 in math from the first test and the 600 in math from the second, or the 600 in reading and writing from the second test, and combine them. And that is what's known as super scoring. You can't super score SATs with ACTs, like you can't combine those tests, but you can combine different section scores from different administrations of the SAT, and about 68% of the ACT, or 68% of schools now allow super scoring on the ACT as well. It's important to note that not all schools accept super scores, and you should double check with them. So that one of the most valuable resources that I can give out is once you establish your target school list, the schools to which you plan to apply, go to their admissions page and look at their admissions requirements and check them regularly because they can change. But look at their admissions requirements and drill down into the parts about standardized tests and what's required and what's optional and if they allow super scoring, that sort of thing. So I started to touch upon this earlier, but what is test optional? So what's going on with test optional? So test optional is it's a way for schools to really deal with the impact of COVID-19, the inability of College Board and ACT to provide enough testing seats last year, and really, just the danger of going to test. So the environment became such that one group of students might have an advantage if they could test and another student wouldn't because they couldn't test. So about 1,600 schools went test optional, and test optional has many different meanings. It's not a generic term, or I'm sorry, a single term with a single meaning. Test optional means that schools will allow you to choose whether or not to submit your SAT or ACT scores, and they may or may not use them in admissions decisions. So if you choose to submit them, they would use them in the admissions decision. If you choose to not submit them, then they couldn't and they wouldn't. And then two other terms to know: test flexible. So test flexible schools require some other form of test. So AP exams or IB tests, those are typical of exams that test flexible schools may ask. And then there's test blind schools, and test blind schools stand out because they don't they won't accept the tests if you submit them, and so they won't consider them at all. And importantly, they also won't consider them when they award merit aid. uh, and there are about 80 schools that are fully test blind right now. And overall, there's about 4,000 accredited degree granting institutions in the country, and about 1,600 of those, actually a little more, are now test optional, or some form of test optional. Um, 900 or so are ranked in top tiers and include the University of Chicago, Wake Forest, Brandeis, Bucknell, and the University of California schools. And then about 65 schools are undergoing trials with test blind admissions policies. So the reality is, the college admissions environment has changed pretty profoundly, and in response to a pandemic, among other things. So students are left with the decision of, should they take the test or not? Like, should they spend the time preparing for the test? And there's just a couple of rule of thumbs that I use with students. So the main thing is, like, if you can improve your candidacy, so if you need to be competitive at the schools to which you're applying with your application, and you would be helped by submitting a favorable score, so your goal score, then yes, you should absolutely take the tests and submit the tests, if as long as you're reaching your goal score, because you make yourself a better candidate. So the rule of thumb is, if you make yourself a better candidate, then yes, prepare, take, and submit. um, if you want to be considered for school specific merit aid, yeah, double check on their admissions page. But over $4 billion is still tied to merit aid, and merit aid is tied to PSAT, SAT, and ACT scores, more than it is tied to anything else. So those are a couple of big points. If you're going to a University of California, if you're applying to a University of California school, they're test blind. And I think they've also moved the merit question to test blind as well. But again, the best thing that you can do is go to the admissions page, double check it, click, if it says like COVID update, also click on that to see if there are any nuances to their normal admissions process and plan. Um, so to recap, how to be a competitive college applicant: take the PSAT when it becomes available. Get started early with test prep, so you're not cramming it or stressing, 2 months before a test, or going to a boot camp the weekend before an exam. Uh, Most importantly, for your college candidacy, is take rigorous courses and electives. Make sure they match your interests, so you enjoy taking them, or at least you don't hate taking them. But the rigor of your transcript, will become even more important than it has in the past, because of the test optional environment. Tell an authentic story with your essays. So don't make the mistake of, like, thinking that every admissions committee wants the 4.2 student that is plays violin and is captain of the forensics club and in Model UN, and put that out of your mind. You need to tell your story, because admissions committees, they're looking to build a community, and they're not looking to build, for the most part, they're not looking to build a community of the same student 2,000 times. They want variability, they want diversity, they want interesting people. So tell your story. um, if you've participated in community service, if you've done, if you've worked, if you've worked your way through high school, if you've done things like that, those are things that are relevant and you want to showcase. And you also want to reach out to the admissions office when you can. They will talk to you. It blows my mind how sort of standoffish people are. Sometimes they're very busy and they can't talk to you, but it makes sense to reach out and form a relationship if you can. So the highlights of this presentation, and hopefully these are some takeaways for you: that take mock exams for both the SAT and the ACT to determine which is the best fit for you. So this is if you plan to take a test and submit scores. Once you set your goals, build a study plan, try and pace your study plan over a lengthy period of time. Whether you're taking the test or not, think about other ways you can make yourself a competitive applicant. So other ways to make yourself a competitive applicant include, uh, showing demonstrated interest in the school itself, um, showing leadership ability, volunteer service, things that demonstrate a track record over time, not like, I shouldn't say this, but I think I joined like a club or two as a senior in high school just to get the club on my resume, because I thought that was important to do. Little did I know that doesn't that doesn't work. Maybe it worked back then. That was a while ago. But no, don't do that. Put the stuff that you care about down. And if you've grown within an organization, if you had a leadership position, actually, absolutely put that stuff down. And don't give up. The process is daunting. It's drawn out. There are many hoops, but it's definitely manageable, and everybody can be successful as long as you just put some time and thought into it. So, Aiden, can I turn it back over to you?
Yeah, definitely. So, um, yeah, at this point, we're pretty much wrapped up with the presentation. But just wanted to let you guys know that if you have any questions on standardized testing, specifically on scholarships or even just about college life in general, um, you can head over, follow me on Instagram. It's at Access Scholarships. Some of you might follow me already. But I'm always posting resources there for standardized testing, for scholarships, for just college success in general. So recommend that. Um, and I also have free office hour sessions. But I will be sending out the link to those in the email that will be going out tomorrow. So if any of you guys have any want to reach out to